My name is Amber Mitchell, and I'm 29 years old. I stand alone in the empty living room of my brand new home, surrounded by untouched platters of food and unopened wine bottles. 7 years of saving every penny, skipping vacations, and working overtime led to this moment, my dream home, finally mine. The house I always imagined would be filled with laughter and family. I sent the invitations 3 weeks ago, called everyone personally to confirm. But as the clock strikes 9, I have to accept the truth. Not a single member of my family showed up to my housewarming party. Before I tell you my story, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop it in the comments, hit that like button, and subscribe if you want to hear more stories like mine. Growing up in a crowded 2-bedroom apartment wasn't easy. As the middle child of 5 siblings, personal space was a luxury I rarely experienced. Our family of 7 squeezed into less than 800 square feet, in a building where the elevator worked maybe once a month, and the hallways always smelled like a mixture of 20 different dinners cooking at once. My parents, Thomas and Eleanor Mitchell, worked multiple jobs to keep us fed and clothed. Dad was a warehouse worker by day and security guard on weekends. Mom cleaned office buildings in the evenings after working at a school cafeteria during the day. They were always exhausted, their hands rough and cracked from constant work, but they never complained. Education is your ticket out, my father would say as he helped me with homework despite barely keeping his eyes open. Learn so you can have choices we never had. Money was always tight. The end of each month meant creative meals made from whatever remained in the pantry. My older brother Ryan and I would sometimes pretend we weren't hungry so our younger siblings could have larger portions. The walls of our apartment were so thin that we could hear the neighbors' conversations, their arguments, their television shows. Privacy was non-existent. By the time I was 12, I knew I wanted something different for my future. I remember standing in front of an open house one Sunday when Mom and I were walking home from the grocery store. The house wasn't even particularly fancy, just a modest 2-story with a small front yard, but to me, it looked like a palace. One day, I'm going to live in a house like that, I told my mother with absolute certainty. She smiled and squeezed my hand, neither encouraging nor discouraging the dream. We'll see, sweetie, she said. Now help me carry these bags up 5 flights of stairs. While other teenagers hung out at the mall or went to movies, I started working as soon as I was legally able. My first job was at a local ice cream shop when I was 16. The schedule was brutal, straight from school to work, then home to do homework until midnight, but the paycheck made it worth it. Most of my earnings went to help with household expenses, but I always tucked away a small portion in a savings account I opened with help from my high school economics teacher. Despite the long hours working, I maintained solid grades. Not straight A's, I was too tired for that, but good enough to qualify for a partial scholarship to State University. My guidance counselor had suggested applying to more prestigious schools, but I knew my family couldn't afford the difference, even with financial aid. College was just as much of a hustle as high school. I worked at the campus bookstore, took night shifts at a 24-hour diner, and tutored freshmen in writing composition. Sleep became a luxury, but I never lost sight of my goal. My tiny dorm room was plastered with pictures of houses cut from magazines, constant reminders of what I was working toward. It was during my senior year of college, at age 22, that I wrote down my goal formally. I still have that notebook page, now framed in my home office. By age 30, I will own my own home where my family can gather for holidays and celebrations. After graduation, I was fortunate to land an entry-level position at a marketing firm. The starting salary wasn't impressive, but it offered stability and growth potential. I rented the smallest apartment I could find, a studio barely bigger than my college dorm room, and calculated exactly how much I would need to save for a down payment on a modest house in a decent neighborhood. The number was intimidating, $50,000. Given my salary after taxes, rent, student loan payments, and basic living expenses, I calculated it would take me about 7 years to save that amount. 7 years of sacrifice and discipline. I created a detailed financial plan and taped it to my refrigerator. Every expense was categorized, every dollar accounted for. I opened a high-yield savings account specifically for my house fund and set up automatic transfers from each paycheck. Just 6 months into my savings plan, my ancient Honda Civic broke down completely. The mechanic delivered the bad news. The transmission was shot, and the repair would cost more than the car was worth. I needed reliable transportation for work, so I had no choice but to dip into my fledgling house fund for a used car. Watching my savings drop by almost $5,000 was physically painful. That night, I sat on the floor of my tiny apartment and cried out of frustration. 7 years suddenly seemed like an eternity. I called my older brother Ryan, hoping for some encouragement. "Maybe you should be more realistic, Amber," he said after listening to my situation. "Most people our age aren't even thinking about buying houses. Why not enjoy your 20s a little? Travel, date, have fun." I hung up feeling even worse. That Sunday, I drove my newly purchased used car to an open house in a neighborhood I hoped to live in someday. The real estate agent probably thought I was wasting her time, but walking through that 3-bedroom ranch with its small backyard and kitchen island renewed my determination. I went home, revised my budget to be even more stringent, and recommitted to my goal. The setback with the car meant I'd need to work even harder, but I was no stranger to hard work. I would rebuild my savings and stay focused on the dream that had been with me since I was a child, staring through windows at homes that felt worlds away from our cramped apartment. My savings plan left absolutely no room for indulgences. Every purchase was scrutinized through the lens of necessity. Did I need it to survive? Would it help me advance professionally? If the answer to both questions was no, the money stayed in my account. My budget became almost a religious text. Sunday mornings were dedicated to reviewing the previous week's spending and planning for the week ahead. I tracked every penny in a color-coded spreadsheet, celebrating small victories when I came in under budget in any category. The system was strict but effective. My lunch was always packed from home, prepared in large batches on Sundays. I learned to cook increasingly complex meals to avoid the temptation of takeout. My coffee came from a cheap drip machine in my apartment, not the convenient shop across from my office where colleagues gathered each morning. Social life became the most difficult sacrifice. My work friends regularly went out for happy hours and weekend brunches. At first, I made excuses about prior commitments, but eventually, I had to be honest. "I'm saving to buy a house," I explained when declining an invitation to a birthday celebration at an expensive restaurant. The reactions ranged from admiration to confusion. "At your age? Isn't that something to worry about in your 30s?" my co-worker Madison asked. She wasn't trying to be unkind, just genuinely perplexed by my priorities. Vacations were out of the question. When my closest work friend Tara invited me to join her weekend trip to the beach just 3 hours away, I had to decline. The hotel, gas, and meals out would have set my savings back by at least several $100s. You can't put your whole life on hold for a future that might not happen exactly as you plan, Tara said gently. What about building memories now? Her words stung, because they echoed my own occasional doubts. But I reminded myself that I wasn't putting my life on hold, I was working toward a specific, meaningful goal. The satisfaction of watching my house fund grow outweighed the temporary pleasure of a weekend getaway. To avoid feeling completely deprived, I created a small reward system for hitting savings milestones. For every $5,000 saved, I allowed myself one modest treat: a new book, a movie ticket, or a dinner at a restaurant I had been wanting to try. These small indulgences helped maintain my morale without significantly impacting my progress. The hardest part wasn't the daily sacrifices, but explaining them to my family. During a Sunday dinner at my parents' apartment, I excitedly shared that I had reached the $10,000 mark in my savings. "That's nice, honey," my mother said with a puzzled expression. "But don't you think you should be enjoying your youth a bit more? All this penny-pinching doesn't seem healthy." "I'm not penny-pinching, Mom. I'm investing in my future," I explained. "In a few years, I'll have enough for a down payment on a house." "A house?" She laughed as if I'd said I was saving for a spaceship. "Sweetheart, housing prices are through the roof. By the time you save enough, they'll be even higher. Maybe you should consider something more realistic, like a nice condo." "I've done the research, Mom. I know exactly how much I need and how long it will take to get there," I insisted, hurt by her dismissive tone. My younger sister Jessica, who was still in college, rolled her eyes. Classic Amber, always the serious one with the spreadsheets and the 5-year plans. "Someone in this family has to think beyond next week," I shot back, immediately regretting my sharp tone. Ryan, my older brother, stepped in with his usual peacekeeping demeanor. "Hey, if that's what makes you happy, go for it. But life's unpredictable, sis. Don't be so rigid that you miss out on living." The conversation moved on, but their reactions stayed with me. I realized that my family didn't understand my determination, because they had never allowed themselves to want something that seemed so far out of reach. They had accepted the limitations of our financial circumstances in a way I refused to. As I continued to save, my siblings' teasing intensified. "Here comes Ms. Moneybags," my brother Tyler would announce when I arrived for family dinners. "Don't ask her to chip in for pizza, that would set her house fund back by at least a day. Can we talk about something other than Amber's obsession with saving?" Jessica would groan whenever I mentioned anything related to my goal. Their words hurt, but they also fueled my determination. I was going to prove them wrong, not just about the possibility of buying a house, but about the value of delayed gratification and focused effort. By the 3-year mark, I had saved $25,000, halfway to my goal. I treated myself to a nice dinner alone at a restaurant I had wanted to try for months. As I sat there, savoring each bite of a meal that cost more than my usual food budget for an entire week, I felt proud of what I had accomplished. The milestone represented thousands of small choices, countless hours of overtime, and unwavering focus. I took a photo of my dessert, a small chocolate cake, with "halfway home" written in delicate script, and texted it to my family group chat. The responses were underwhelming. "Nice. What's the occasion?" Dad, who had apparently forgotten about my savings goal. "Looks expensive." Mom, subtly criticizing. "Congrats on the cake." Ryan, confused. "Who writes on chocolate?" Tyler, missing the point entirely. "Are you on a date?" Jessica, making assumptions. Not one of them remembered or acknowledged what this moment represented to me. I put my phone away and finished my dessert in silence, reminding myself that this journey was mine alone. Their understanding or approval wasn't necessary for my success. After 3 years of consistently exceeding targets and taking on additional responsibilities at the marketing firm, I was called into my manager's office on a Friday afternoon. Patricia, the department head, smiled as I took a seat across from her desk. "Amber, your work has been exceptional," she began. "You've shown initiative, creativity, and an impressive work ethic. We'd like to offer you a promotion to senior marketing strategist." The position came with a $15,000 salary increase and better benefits. As Patricia detailed the new role's responsibilities, my mind was already calculating how this would affect my savings timeline. With the additional income, I could potentially reach my down payment goal almost a year earlier than planned. I accept, I said before she had even finished speaking. When do I start? Patricia laughed. That's what I like about you, Amber. Always eager to move forward. You'll transition over the next 2 weeks. I floated through the rest of the day, barely able to contain my excitement. This wasn't just a career advancement, it was a significant acceleration of my dream. That evening, I recalculated my budget and savings projections. If I maintained my current frugal lifestyle, despite the salary increase, I could reach my $50,000 goal in just over 2 years instead of 3. That Sunday, I arrived at my parents' apartment for our monthly family dinner, bursting with good news. Everyone was already there: my parents, Ryan and his girlfriend Megan, Jessica, and Tyler. I waited until we were all seated around the dining table before making my announcement. I have some exciting news, I began, unable to keep the smile from my face. I got promoted at work. It's a big step up, and the pay increase is going to help me reach my house goal much faster. That's wonderful, honey, Mom said, patting my hand. I'm sure you earned it with all those late nights. Dad nodded approvingly. Good for you, Amber. Moving up in the world. But before anyone could ask for details, Ryan cleared his throat and reached for Megan's hand. Since we're sharing news, he said with a grin, Megan and I have an announcement too. My stomach dropped. I knew what was coming. We're engaged, Ryan declared, as Megan held up her left hand to display a sparkling diamond ring. The room erupted in excitement. Mom jumped up to hug them both, tears streaming down her face. Dad clapped Ryan on the back, beaming with pride. Jessica and Tyler rushed around the table to examine the ring and congratulate the couple. My news was instantly forgotten in the commotion. We're thinking about a summer wedding, Megan was saying, as everyone peppered them with questions about the proposal and their plans. I sat quietly, genuinely happy for my brother, but feeling the sting of my moment being completely overshadowed. After a few minutes, I pushed aside my disappointment and joined in the celebration, offering my congratulations and admiring Megan's ring. I'm so happy for you both, I said, hugging them each in turn. And I meant it. Ryan had found someone special, and that was worth celebrating. As the evening progressed, wedding talk dominated the conversation. I listened as they discussed potential venues, guest lists, and color schemes. When the topic turned to the wedding party, Megan turned to me with a smile. Amber, I'd love for you to be one of my bridesmaids, she said warmly. I'd be honored, I replied, touched by the gesture. It wasn't until the following week that I learned what being a bridesmaid would entail financially. Megan had chosen a high-end bridal boutique for the dresses, which would cost nearly $1,000 each. The destination bachelorette party she was planning would require a flight to Miami, 3 nights in a resort, and various activities, another $2,000 minimum. I stared at the email detailing these expenses, my heart sinking. These costs would significantly set back my savings plan, potentially delaying my house purchase by months. I called Ryan to discuss the situation, hoping he would understand my financial constraints. I'm so excited to be part of your wedding, I began carefully, but I'm concerned about the costs involved. The dress alone is nearly $1,000, and the bachelorette party. Amber, it's my wedding, Ryan interrupted, his voice tight. This happens once in a lifetime. Can't you put your house obsession aside for one important family event? It's not an obsession, I said defensively. It's a goal I've been working toward for years. I'm just asking if there might be some flexibility with the expenses, or maybe I could help in other ways that don't cost quite so much. Ryan sighed heavily. I'll talk to Megan, but I don't think it's fair to ask her to change her vision for her wedding day. This isn't about money, Amber. It's about supporting your family. The conversation ended awkwardly, and I spent the night tossing and turning, torn between my commitment to my goal and my desire to support my brother on his special day. 2 days later, Jessica called me, her voice immediately confrontational. Ryan told me you're complaining about being a bridesmaid, she accused. Seriously, Amber? You're going to cheap out on your own brother's wedding because of your house fund. I'm not cheaping out, I tried to explain. I just asked if there might be some more affordable options. You got a promotion and a raise, but you're still pinching pennies at everyone else's expense, Jessica continued. Do you have any idea how selfish you sound? Some things are more important than your precious savings account. I know that, I said, fighting back tears. Family is important to me too. That's why I'm trying to find a solution that works for everyone. The solution is simple, Jessica snapped. Stop being so obsessed with your future house, and be present for your family now. Ryan has always been there for you. You can't even be happy for him without making it about your financial situation. After that call, my mother reached out, her approach softer but the message essentially the same. I was being selfish for not enthusiastically embracing the expenses associated with Ryan's wedding. The implication was clear: my saving goal was less valid than my brother's wedding plans. In the end, I agreed to be a bridesmaid and attend the bachelorette party, knowing it would delay my house purchase. I told myself it was worth it to maintain family harmony and support Ryan, but a small part of me resented having to choose. The fact that no one in my family seemed to value my goal, or understand my sacrifices, created a growing sense of disconnection. As I adjusted my budget and savings projections to account for the wedding expenses, I couldn't help but wonder, would my family ever prioritize my dreams the way I was expected to prioritize theirs? With just over $40,000 saved and my new salary making monthly contributions larger, I decided it was time to begin looking at houses. The market was competitive, but not impossible, especially since I was willing to consider properties that needed some work. I reached out to Sophia Martinez, a real estate agent recommended by a colleague, and scheduled an initial meeting to discuss my budget and preferences. Sophia was a vibrant woman in her mid-40s who radiated competence and enthusiasm. So, you've been saving for this for 7 years? She asked, impressed, as we reviewed my financials in her office. Almost 5, actually, I corrected. But it's been my goal for much longer. That's remarkable discipline, Sophia said. Most first-time buyers your age struggle to pull together even a minimal down payment. You're in a strong position. Her validation meant more than she could know. After years of my family dismissing my goal, it was refreshing to have someone recognize the value of my efforts. We established my parameters: a single-family home with at least 2 bedrooms, preferably in one of 3 neighborhoods with good safety records, and reasonable commute times to my office. My absolute maximum budget was just under $300,000, which would keep my monthly payments manageable with my salary. It might take some time to find the right place, Sophia cautioned. The market moves quickly, and in your price range, homes often receive multiple offers. Are you prepared for that? I've waited this long, I said with determination. I can be patient for the right house. The first property Sophia showed me was a small ranch-style home, with a dated kitchen, and only 1 bathroom. The layout was awkward, with a strange flow between rooms, and the backyard was barely larger than a postage stamp. It's not quite what I pictured, I admitted as we walked through the cramped living room with its worn carpet. First showings rarely are, Sophia assured me. This helps us narrow down what you really want versus what you can compromise on. Over the next 3 weekends, we viewed 12 more properties. Some were in better condition than others, but none felt right. Either the location was wrong, the layout was problematic, or the necessary renovations would exceed my budget. After a particularly disappointing showing of a house that looked promising online, but had severe water damage in person, I called my father. He had worked in construction when he was younger, before the warehouse job, and I valued his opinion on home structures. "Dad, would you come with me to see a house this Saturday? I could use your expertise on whether some of these issues are fixable or major problems." There was a pause on the line. "This Saturday?" "I'm sorry, Amber. I promised to help Ryan pick up rental chairs for the engagement party. Maybe another time." "The engagement party isn't until next month," I said, confused. "Yes, but he's picking up the chairs early because the rental place is offering a discount," he explained. "You know how these wedding expenses add up." The irony wasn't lost on me. My family had criticized my financial prudence for years, but apparently, saving money on wedding rentals was important enough to prioritize over helping me with the biggest purchase of my life. "I understand," I said, trying to keep the disappointment from my voice. "Another time, then." Later that week, during our weekly phone call, I mentioned to my mother that I had started looking at houses. "Already?" she asked, surprised. I thought that was still a few years away. "The promotion accelerated my timeline," I explained. "I've saved enough for a decent down payment, and my salary can support a mortgage now." "Well, just don't rush into anything," she cautioned. "You know, there's no shame in starting with a condo instead of a house. Much less maintenance, and you could get something newer for the same price." "I've considered condos," I said, though I hadn't. "But I really want a yard and the freedom to renovate, without condo association restrictions." "Renovations are expensive and stressful," she warned. "And yards are just work. Trust me, after a few weekends of mowing grass and pulling weeds, you might wish you'd settled for a condo." I bit back a retort about settling. My mother had always approached life this way, lowering expectations to avoid disappointment. It was a survival mechanism from years of financial struggle, but it wasn't how I wanted to approach my dreams. The following Saturday, Sophia called with excitement in her voice. "I have a property to show you that just listed this morning. It's slightly under your maximum budget, has 3 bedrooms instead of 2, and it's in your preferred neighborhood. The catch is that it needs some updating, nothing structural, but cosmetic throughout. Can you meet me there in an hour?" I arrived at the address before Sophia, giving me time to assess the exterior. The house was a charming craftsman style with a covered front porch, mature oak tree in the yard, and a detached single-car garage. The paint was faded and the landscaping neglected, but the bones of the place looked solid. When we stepped inside, I felt it immediately, that sense of possibility I had been waiting for. Despite the outdated wallpaper, worn carpeting, and kitchen straight out of the 1980s, the house had an excellent floor plan, large windows that flooded the rooms with natural light, and original hardwood floors hidden under the carpet, confirmed by a discreet peek at a corner. The previous owner was an elderly woman who lived here for 40 years, Sophia explained as we toured the space. Her family is selling the property as is, which is why the price is competitive. We walked through each room, and I mentally catalogued the updates needed: new paint throughout, kitchen and bathroom renovations, carpet removal and floor refinishing, updated light fixtures. It would require work, but nothing beyond what I could manage with my additional savings and some sweat equity. The backyard sealed the deal, spacious enough for the garden I had always wanted, with a covered patio perfect for family gatherings. I could already envision summer barbecues and holiday celebrations with my family gathered there. "I want to make an offer," I told Sophia decisively. She smiled knowingly. I thought this might be the one. Let's go back to my office and prepare the paperwork. The negotiation process was nerve-wracking. My initial offer was countered, and after some back and forth, we settled on a price just slightly above what I had hoped to pay, but still within my budget. The inspection revealed no major issues beyond what we had already observed, and 30 days later, I was scheduled to close on my first home. The evening after the inspection, I shared my news in the family group chat. Great news! My offer on a house was accepted. Closing is set for next month. Can't wait to show you all. The responses trickled in. Congrats, Tyler, with no exclamation point. Good for you, Dad, equally understated. Which house? The one with the yard. Mom, who hadn't seen any of them. Nice. Ryan and I just booked our wedding venue. Jessica, quickly changing the subject. Ryan didn't respond at all. I stared at my phone, a familiar heaviness settling in my chest. I had just achieved the goal I had been working toward for 5 years, and my family's collective reaction had all the enthusiasm of someone acknowledging a slightly interesting weather forecast. On the day of closing, I sat alone at the title company's conference table, signing document after document that would make the house legally mine. I had invited my parents to join me for this milestone moment, but my mother had a hair appointment she couldn't reschedule, and my father said the location was too far out of his way. As I signed the final paper and the agent handed me the keys, I felt a complex mixture of emotions: pride in what I had accomplished entirely on my own, sadness at celebrating alone, and a quiet determination that had become my constant companion over the years. Congratulations, homeowner, Sophia said warmly, shaking my hand. You've worked hard for this. Enjoy every moment. I drove to my new house, and stood alone on the front porch, keys in hand. This moment should have been shared, I thought. But as I unlocked the door and stepped inside, hearing my footsteps echo in the empty rooms, I realized that this achievement was truly mine. Every dollar saved, every sacrifice made, every doubt overcome, I had done that. And perhaps there was a special kind of strength in that solitary victory. The first night in my new house was both exhilarating and overwhelming. I slept on a camping air mattress in the master bedroom, surrounded by boxes and the echo of empty rooms. Despite the discomfort, I fell asleep with a smile on my face. I was finally home. The magnitude of the renovation work became apparent in the harsh morning light. The wallpaper in the hallway was peeling, the kitchen cabinets looked even more dated than I remembered, and the bathroom sink had a persistent drip. Standing in the middle of the kitchen with a cup of instant coffee, I felt a momentary wave of panic. What had I gotten myself into? But panic wasn't going to strip wallpaper or paint cabinets. I opened my laptop and created a detailed renovation schedule, breaking down each project into manageable steps. My plan was to focus on one room at a time, starting with the bedroom, so I'd have a comfortable retreat at the end of dusty work days. YouTube became my constant companion and instructor. I watched countless videos on removing wallpaper, refinishing hardwood floors, painting kitchen cabinets, and basic plumbing repairs. The comment sections were filled with encouraging stories from other first-time DIYers, making me feel part of a community of home improvers. My first major project was removing the old carpet to reveal the hardwood floors beneath. I started in my bedroom, carefully pulling up the carpet and padding, then removing hundreds of staples one by one. The work was tedious and physically demanding, but when I finally saw the complete hardwood floor, dingy and scratched, but structurally solid, I felt a surge of accomplishment. Refinishing the floor was another challenge entirely. I rented a commercial sander from a local hardware store, watching the instructional video 3 times before I dared turn it on. The machine was powerful and intimidating, but after a tentative start, I found a rhythm. Hours later, sweaty and covered in fine wood dust, I had a smooth, bare wood floor ready for staining. I called my sister Jessica that evening, excited to share my progress and hoping to interest her in helping with the next phase. "The floor looks amazing," I told her, sending a photo. "I'm going to stain it this weekend. Want to come help? I'll order pizza and supply all the beer you can drink." "Thanks, but I'm busy this weekend," she replied without elaboration. "The floor looks nice, though. What about next weekend?" I pressed. "I'm starting on the kitchen cabinets. It would be fun to work on it together." "Amber, I don't really do home improvement stuff," Jessica said with a sigh. "And honestly, wedding planning is taking all my free time. I'm the maid of honor, remember? Ryan and Megan have events planned every weekend until the wedding." "Right," I said, trying to hide my disappointment. "Of course. Maybe after the wedding, then." "Maybe," she replied, in a tone that clearly meant no. After several similar rejections from other family members, I stopped asking. Each weekend, I worked alone painting walls, refinishing cabinets, replacing light fixtures. The physical labor was exhausting but satisfying, and with each completed project, the house became more mine. One Saturday morning, as I was struggling to remove the old kitchen sink, my next-door neighbor Kenneth Simmons knocked on the door. Kenneth was a retired contractor in his 60s who had noticed my renovation activities. "Thought you might need a hand with that sink," he said when I opened the door. "Those old cast iron ones are heavier than they look." I gratefully accepted his help, and within an hour, the new sink was installed with his expert guidance. Kenneth refused payment, but accepted a cold lemonade on the back patio. "You've done impressive work here," he commented, looking around at my progress. "Not many young people these days have the patience for renovation. Most want everything move-in ready." I couldn't afford move-in ready, I admitted. But I'm actually enjoying learning how to do these things myself. "Well, if you need help with anything else, just holler," Kenneth offered. "My wife Barbara makes a mean lasagna, too. You should come for dinner sometime and meet some of the other neighbors." That dinner invitation led to connections with several families on my street. Barbara Simmons introduced me to Diane and Robert Wu across the street, who had a daughter about my age. They invited me to their monthly book club, which introduced me to even more neighbors. Gradually, I built a community in my new neighborhood, people who appreciated my renovation efforts and offered help, advice, and friendship. As my house transformed and my local connections grew, I noticed a disturbing trend in my family relationships. The calls and texts from family members became increasingly infrequent. When we did speak, the conversations were dominated by wedding talk, with little interest in my life or my home progress. Family dinners, once monthly events, became sporadic and usually centered around some aspect of Ryan's upcoming wedding. I attended dutifully, bringing dishes to share and presenting a cheerful demeanor, but the disconnect was palpable. No one asked about my house anymore, and my attempts to share renovation milestones were met with polite, but disinterested nods. "You should see the kitchen now that the cabinets are painted and the new countertops are in," I mentioned during one dinner. "It's completely transformed." "That's nice, dear," my mother replied absently, then immediately turned to Jessica. "Did you finalize the floral arrangements for the rehearsal dinner?" The wedding was still 3 months away, but it had become the gravitational center around which all family interactions orbited. I found myself invited to fewer family gatherings, casual Sunday brunches, or impromptu movie nights that I only learned about afterward through social media posts. "We didn't think you'd be interested," my mother explained when I asked about a family outing to a local festival. "You're always so busy with your house projects." The irony was painful. For years, I had saved and sacrificed specifically to create a home where my family could gather. Now that I finally had the space, they seemed less interested than ever in spending time with me. Despite the growing distance, I continued to prepare my home with family in mind. I dedicated one of the 3 bedrooms as a guest room, decorating it with comfortable bedding and thoughtful touches like reading lamps and a small bookshelf. I imagined my parents staying over during holidays, or Jessica visiting for weekend retreats. The backyard patio was transformed with string lights, comfortable seating, and potted plants, creating an ideal space for family barbecues. I even installed a fire pit, remembering how much Ryan and Tyler had always wanted one during our apartment days. By the time the major renovations were complete, 6 months after moving in, my house had transformed from a dated, neglected property to a charming, welcoming home. The kitchen gleamed with white cabinets, navy blue walls, and butcher block countertops. The hardwood floors throughout the house had been restored to a warm honey color. The bathroom featured a new vanity, classic subway tile, and fixtures that honored the home's craftsman heritage while providing modern convenience. I stood in the completed living room, taking in the results of months of hard work. Pride swelled in my chest, but it was tinged with melancholy. I had created this beautiful space with my family in mind, but they had been absent throughout the process. Would they ever truly appreciate what I had accomplished? As I hung the last piece of artwork, the vintage map of our city, that I had framed myself, I made a decision. It was time to invite my family to see the finished home. Not just for a casual visit, but for a proper housewarming party where I could show them what their daughter and sister had achieved. Maybe, I thought hopefully, seeing the physical manifestation of my years of sacrifice would help them understand. Maybe standing in the rooms I had lovingly restored would make them recognize the value of my dream and the determination it had taken to realize it. I sent a text to our family group chat. House renovations are finally complete. I'd love to host a housewarming party next month. Let me know what dates work for everyone. I waited anxiously for responses, hoping for enthusiasm, but preparing myself for indifference. What I received was somewhere in between non-committal replies that neither accepted nor declined. We'll check calendar. Dad. Might be busy with wedding stuff, but we'll try. Ryan. Let me see what we have going on. Jessica. Need to confirm work schedule. Tyler. That sounds lovely, dear. We'll see if we can make it. Mom. Not a single definitive yes. No congratulations on completing the renovations. No expressions of excitement to finally see the house. Just vague, lukewarm acknowledgements that left me feeling more isolated than ever. I clutched my phone, fighting back tears of frustration. After 5 years of saving and 6 months of backbreaking renovation work, was a simple congratulations and a firm commitment to attend my housewarming too much to ask. Determined not to let their tepid responses diminish my achievement, I began planning the housewarming party anyway. I would invite my new neighbors, colleagues from work, and friends who had supported me throughout the process. And I would leave the invitation open to my family, hoping that they would ultimately choose to share in this milestone with me. As I created a guest list on my laptop that evening, I couldn't help but notice that my family names, once automatically at the top of any celebration list, now blended in with the others, just a few more people who might, or might not show up. The realization was painful but clarifying. My definition of family was evolving, expanding beyond blood relations to include those who had actually been present and supportive during this significant chapter of my life. I approached the housewarming party planning with the same methodical attention to detail that had characterized my saving and renovation processes. This event was important, not just a celebration of my new home, but a symbolic culmination of a journey that had defined the last 5 years of my life. First, I needed to select the perfect date. I meticulously checked the family calendar for any potential conflicts. Ryan and Megan's wedding was still 2 months away. There were no birthdays or anniversaries in the timeframe I was considering, and no major holidays would interfere. I settled on a Saturday evening 3 weeks away, giving everyone plenty of notice. With the date confirmed, I designed personalized invitations. For my neighbors and friends, I created digital invites with photos of the renovated house. For my family, I went a step further, ordering custom printed invitations with a before and after photo of the house on high-quality cardstock. I included handwritten notes in each family member's card, expressing how much their presence would mean to me. Mom and Dad, I wrote, I can't wait to show you the home your support and encouragement helped make possible. Having you here to celebrate would mean everything. Ryan, another note read, from our days sharing a bedroom in the apartment to now, I'd love for you and Megan to see the guest room that's ready whenever you want to visit. Jessica and Tyler, I wrote in their cards, remember how we used to dream about having a backyard? Wait until you see the patio and fire pit. It was designed with family gatherings in mind. I mailed the invitations 4 weeks before the event, sending a digital backup to the family group chat. Official invitations are in the mail, but wanted to make sure everyone has the date saved: Saturday, June 15th at 6 p.m. for my housewarming party. Hope you all can make it. With invitations dispatched, I turned to planning the menu. I wanted to prepare homemade food rather than catering, making the event more personal. I spent evenings after work testing recipes from scratch: spinach artichoke dip, mini quiches, stuffed mushrooms, and my mother's famous meatballs that had been the highlight of family gatherings throughout my childhood. The beverage selection required similar consideration. I knew my father enjoyed craft beers, so I selected several local varieties. My mother preferred white wine, Jessica liked sweet cocktails, and Ryan was a bourbon enthusiast. I made sure to have each person's favorite, along with non-alcoholic options for designated drivers and those who didn't drink. Decorations were minimal but thoughtful. Fresh flowers for each room, candles for ambience, and subtle touches that highlighted the home's best features. I created a photo display in the hallway showing the renovation process, from the empty, dated rooms on moving day to the transformed spaces that now existed. I thought my family might appreciate seeing the work that had gone into creating this home. As the RSVPs from friends and neighbors began flowing in, I noticed the silence from my family members. 1 week after sending the invitations, I had received enthusiastic responses from nearly everyone except them. My colleague Tara was absolutely coming and can't wait to see the finished product. The Simmons from next door were honored to be invited and looking forward to celebrating. Even casual acquaintances from my book club had confirmed attendance. But from my family, nothing. No RSVPs, no mentions of the party in our regular communications, no questions about what they could bring or how they could help. It was as if the invitation had never been sent. 2 weeks before the party, I decided to call each family member personally. My father answered on the 4th ring, the sound of a baseball game audible in the background. Dad, I was just calling to confirm if you and Mom received the invitation to my housewarming party on the 15th. Oh, right, the party, he said, his attention clearly divided. Yes, we got it. Your mother has it on the refrigerator. Great. So you'll be able to make it? I prompted, seeking a clear answer. Well, we'll certainly try, honey. That's a busy time of year with the garden and everything. Dad, I specifically checked that there were no family conflicts before setting the date, I said, trying to keep frustration from my voice. It would really mean a lot to have you both there. We'll do our best, he offered, which was neither a commitment nor a refusal. Let me talk to your mother and confirm. The calls to my siblings yielded similarly non-committal responses. Ryan, Megan and I have a lot of wedding stuff that weekend, but we'll try to stop by if we finish early. Jessica, I might have plans with friends, but I'm not sure yet. Can I let you know closer to the date? Tyler, I think I'm working that Saturday, but if my shift changes, I'll come. None of them asked if they could bring anything or offered to help with preparations. There were no questions about the house, or expressions of excitement to finally see the finished renovation. Just vague, reluctant responses that left me feeling more alone than ever. The day before the party, having received no definitive answers from any family members, I called my mother one last time. Mom, I'm finalizing food preparations for tomorrow, and wanted to check if you and Dad will be coming. And if you've heard from Ryan, Jessica, or Tyler. There was a pause on the line. Oh, Amber, I meant to call you. Your father pulled a muscle in his back yesterday working in the garden. He's not up for going out, and I should really stay home to take care of him. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, genuinely concerned but also suspicious of the convenient timing. Is there anything I can do to help? No, we'll be fine. He just needs rest, she replied quickly. As for the others, I think they all have conflicts. Ryan mentioned something about a meeting with the wedding photographer that got rescheduled. On a Saturday evening. I questioned. You know how these wedding vendors are, my mother said defensively. They work weekends because that's when people get married. I didn't push further. The message was clear, none of them would be attending. Whatever their reasons, legitimate, or excuses, the result was the same. My family would not be present to celebrate this significant milestone in my life. That evening, I completed the final preparations for the party. I arranged platters of food in the refrigerator, set up the bar area, and placed flower arrangements throughout the house. Everything was perfect except for the absence of the people I had once assumed would be the first to celebrate my achievements. As I stood in the kitchen, surveying the prepared food and decorated spaces, I felt a complex mix of emotions. Disappointment, certainly. Hurt, inevitably. But also a strange sense of clarity. For years, I had been saving and working toward a dream that included my family at its center. The house, with its guest room and gathering spaces, had been designed with them in mind. But perhaps it was time to recognize that the family I had been designing for existed more in my hopes than in reality. The people who had actually supported my journey were not those connected by blood, but those who had chosen to be present, neighbors who lent tools and advice, colleagues who listened to renovation stories with genuine interest, new friends who recognized the value of my efforts. I went to bed that night with a revised expectation for the party. It would still be a celebration, not of the family gatherings I had once envisioned, but of the home I had created and the community I was building. And perhaps that was enough. The morning of the housewarming dawned bright and clear, a perfect June day. I woke early, rehearsing in my mind how I would handle questions about my absent family. I decided on honesty without bitterness. They had prior commitments, unfortunately. Let me show you the kitchen renovation. As I arranged the final food platters and chilled the drinks, I kept my phone close, half expecting a last-minute text from someone in my family. But the only messages were from friends confirming their attendance and asking if they could bring anything. At 5:30, half an hour before the official start time, I took one final walk through my home. Each room represented countless hours of work and years of sacrifice. The gleaming hardwood floors, the freshly painted walls, the carefully selected furnishings, all of it was exactly as I had envisioned. This was my achievement, regardless of who was there to witness it. I straightened a picture frame, fluffed a pillow, and whispered to the empty house, "You are enough. I am enough." Then I went to the kitchen to await my guests, hoping that at least one familiar face from my past would join the new friends celebrating my future. At exactly 6 o'clock, the doorbell rang. My heart leapt, momentarily hoping it might be my parents, or one of my siblings, coming to surprise me despite their earlier excuses. Instead, I opened the door to find Kenneth and Barbara Simmons, my next-door neighbors, beaming on the porch with a potted plant and a bottle of wine. "Wouldn't miss it for the world," Kenneth said warmly as I welcomed them in. "First guests get the complete tour, right?" Over the next 30 minutes, more neighbors and friends arrived. There was from across the street, Tara and her husband from work, members of my book club, and colleagues from the office. Each person arrived with a gift and genuine enthusiasm to see the house they'd heard so much about. As I welcomed guests and accepted their congratulations, I couldn't help checking my phone periodically and glancing toward the door whenever the bell rang. By 7 o'clock, with the party in full swing and still no sign of any family members, a colleague asked the question I had been dreading. "Is your family coming? I'd love to meet them after hearing your renovation stories." "They had other commitments today," I said with a practiced smile. "My brother's getting married soon, so they're busy with wedding preparations." "That's too bad," she replied sympathetically. "They are missing a wonderful party and an amazing home." By 8 o'clock, it became clear that no family members would be showing up. The house was filled with the laughter and conversation of 20 guests, all of whom seemed genuinely happy to be celebrating with me. But the absence of my family created a hollow feeling that I couldn't quite shake. I excused myself to the kitchen, ostensibly to refill a platter of appetizers, but really to check my phone again and compose myself. No missed calls. No apologetic texts. No last-minute announcements that they were on their way. Just silence. Tara found me staring at my phone, my expression giving away my disappointment. "They're not coming, are they?" she asked gently. I shook my head, fighting back tears. "Not one of them." "I'm so sorry, Amber," she said, giving my shoulder a squeeze. "I know how much you wanted them here." "It's fine," I lied. "I have all of you." "Yes, you do," Tara affirmed, handing me a glass of wine. "And we're all incredibly proud of what you've accomplished. This house is a testament to your determination and vision. Don't let their absence diminish that." I took a deep breath, squared my shoulders, and returned to my guests with a renewed determination to enjoy the evening despite my family's absence. And surprisingly, as the night progressed, I did. We gathered around the fire pit in the backyard, sharing stories and laughter. My neighbors expressed genuine admiration for the renovation work, asking detailed questions about the process and complimenting specific features. My colleagues toasted my achievement with real warmth. By the time the last guest departed around 11, leaving me with promises to return soon, I felt a complex mix of emotions. The disappointment of my family's absence remained, but it was tempered by the genuine connection I had felt with my guests. These people had shown up not out of obligation, but because they wanted to celebrate with me. As I closed the front door behind the final departing couple, the silence of the house enveloped me. I began the process of cleaning up, collecting wine glasses and dessert plates from various surfaces. The physical activity helped contain the emotions threatening to spill over. When the kitchen was tidy and the leftovers stored away, I collapsed onto my sofa, finally allowing myself to confront the reality of the evening. I picked up my phone and, against my better judgment, called my mother. She answered on the fourth ring, her voice cautious. "Amber. Is everything okay? It's late." "The party's over," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "I just wanted to check on Dad's back. Is he feeling any better?" There was a momentary pause. "Oh, yes, much better actually. We've been watching that new mystery series on Netflix. In the background, I could hear laughter that sounded like my siblings. Is that Ryan and Jessica? I asked, my stomach tightening. Another pause. Yes, they stopped by to help with some wedding planning. Just an impromptu thing. The realization hit me like a physical blow. They were together, all of them, while I had been hosting the party. They had all claimed they couldn't attend. They hadn't been busy with wedding photographers or prior commitments. They simply hadn't wanted to come. Amber, my mother said into my silence. Are you still there? You're all together right now. I confirmed, struggling to keep my voice even. Well, yes, but it wasn't planned. Ryan and Megan had some wedding questions, and then Jessica and Tyler stopped by, and we ordered pizza. While I was hosting my housewarming party. The one I invited all of you to weeks ago. The one celebrating the home I spent 5 years saving for and 6 months renovating. Honey, we explained we couldn't make it, my mother said defensively. Your father's back is miraculously better now that you're having a family gathering without me, I finished for her. Was there ever a back injury, Mom? Or was that just an excuse? Amber, that's not fair, she protested. You know how demanding you can be with your expectations. Not everything revolves around your house and your plans. Her words stung precisely, because they revealed how she truly saw me as demanding and self-centered rather than disciplined and determined. In her eyes, my 5-year journey to homeownership was not an achievement to be celebrated, but a selfish obsession to be tolerated. I have to go, I said, unable to continue the conversation without breaking down. Enjoy your evening. I ended the call and finally allowed the tears to come. I cried for the family gathering I had envisioned but never had, for the years of dismissal and indifference, for the realization that the people I had worked so hard to create a home for didn't value that effort enough to show up for a single evening. When the initial wave of emotion passed, I moved to my back patio and sat by the now extinguished fire pit. The night air was cool and still, the neighborhood quiet. In that silence, something shifted within me. The pain remained, but alongside it grew a clarity I had been avoiding for years. My family's absence tonight wasn't an anomaly or a simple scheduling conflict. It was the culmination of a pattern that had been present throughout my adult life. My dreams and achievements had never been given the same weight as my siblings. My determination and discipline had been labeled as obsession and rigidity rather than celebrated as strengths. For years, I had been trying to earn their approval and validation through achievement. I had imagined that if I could just reach this goal, buying the perfect family gathering place, they would finally see me clearly and value my path. Tonight had definitively proven that assumption wrong. The realization was painful, but also strangely liberating. If their approval was not forthcoming regardless of my achievements, perhaps it was time to stop organizing my life around obtaining it. Perhaps it was time to create boundaries that protected my sense of self-worth rather than continuously exposing it to their indifference. I spent the next few days in contemplation, going through the motions of work and daily life while internally reassessing my family relationships. I didn't call or text any family members, and notably, none of them reached out to ask how the party had gone. By the end of the week, I had reached several difficult, but necessary conclusions. First, I would no longer chase my family's approval or validation. My worth and my achievements were real, regardless of their acknowledgement. Second, I would create and enforce healthier boundaries. I would still participate in family events, but I would no longer bend over backwards to accommodate their schedules while they made no effort to accommodate mine. Third, and perhaps most importantly, I would invest more deeply in the relationships that were mutually supportive, my growing circle of friends, neighbors, and colleagues who had shown genuine interest in my life and accomplishments. The opportunity to implement these changes came sooner than expected. The following week, I received a text from Jessica about Ryan's upcoming wedding. Mom wants to know if you can come to the rehearsal dinner a day early to help with centerpieces and place cards. Everyone's meeting at their house at 6 p.m. on Thursday. In the past, I would have immediately rearranged my schedule to accommodate this request, eager to prove my family commitment. Instead, I replied, "I'm afraid I have a prior commitment Thursday evening. I can help on Friday, during the day, before the rehearsal dinner if that works." Jessica's response was immediate and telling, "Never mind. We'll figure it out without you." No attempt to find an alternative time. No acknowledgement of my offer to help on Friday. Just immediate dismissal, because I didn't drop everything at their request. Rather than feeling guilty or defensive, I felt confirmation of my new perspective. The dynamic had always been one-sided, with the expectation that I would conform to their needs while mine were secondary. Over the next few months, I maintained cordial, but more distant relationships with my family members. I attended Ryan's wedding, smiled in photographs, and performed my duties as a bridesmaid without complaint. But I no longer shared details about my life or sought their input on my decisions. When they asked superficial questions about my house, I gave equally superficial answers. Instead, I focused on nurturing the connections that had begun to form at my housewarming party. I joined a community garden with Barbara Simmons and several other neighbors. I accepted Tara's invitation to a weekly hiking group. I hosted book club meetings at my home and organized a neighborhood block party that was a tremendous success. 6 months after the housewarming party, my home had become exactly what I had always envisioned, a gathering place filled with warmth and connection. Just not with the people I had originally planned to gather. On a crisp autumn evening, as I hosted a dinner party for my closest new friends, Diane Wu raised her glass in a toast to Amber, who created not just a beautiful home, but a beautiful community. "We're all better for having you as our friend and neighbor." As glasses clinked and warm smiles surrounded me, I realized that the true value of my 5-year journey wasn't just the physical house I had purchased and renovated. It was the discovery that family isn't defined by blood or obligation, but by presence and mutual support. It's made up of the people who show up not just when it's convenient or expected, but when it matters most. My beautiful house, once envisioned as a gathering place for my biological family, had indeed become a home filled with love and connection, just with a family of my own choosing rather than the one I was born into. The path had been different than I imagined, but the destination was perhaps even richer than my original dream. And that, I realized as I looked around at the smiling faces of my chosen family, was an achievement worth celebrating every single day. So what about you? Have you ever experienced a similar disappointment with family? Or have you found your own chosen family along the way? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories like mine. Remember, sometimes the family we create is more supportive than the one we're born into, and that's perfectly okay. Thank you for listening, and may you find your own circle of people who truly show up for you.